Welcome to the Entre Ed Talk podcast. We are your hosts, Toy Hirschman and
Laura McCall.
Join us as we dive into incredible stories from inspiring entrepreneurs around the world.
Whether you are an educator looking for ideas to engage students, a new learner, or someone who wants to be inspired, our guest journeys and their ideas will give you resources to create value and take your own leap into entrepreneurship.
We are so looking forward to sharing our message with you.
And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to the Entre Ed Talk podcast on whatever platform you listen.
Hi, and welcome to Entre Ed Talk podcast. I'm Laura, and I'm so happy to be chatting with Duane Wilson of San Francisco Achievers. Duane calls San Francisco and Chicagoland area home, and after starting his first business while in high school, he realized he found great joy in advising youth on starting their own enterprises and in empowering them to believe that they can achieve anything. During his college years, despite being busy as a founder of another startup company and internships in Europe and at Disney, he was fortunate to create his own degree in social entrepreneurship while receiving a certificate in nonprofit management and a certificate of entrepreneurial management from the University of Iowa. Upon returning to the Chicago area, he also earned a certificate in value-centered leadership from DePaul University. From these experiences, Duane authored a children's book entitled Jackie and the Dreamstalk, and we'll get into that a little bit later today, which is used around the world as an inspirational step-by-step guide on starting business for readers ages 9 to 14 years old. His other writings include articles and academic resources. As a 2016 Chicago Defender Man of Excellence honoree, in 2017 Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame inductee from Willowbrook High School, service is ingrained in him and his entire life. Recognized in Forbes magazine as a Gratitude Network Fellow Changemaker for Children, this is prevalent in his various roles as Executive Director of San Francisco Achievers, past adjunct faculty for entrepreneurship and management at Columbia College Chicago, manager of Business Accelerator for Good City, past executive director of the Peace Corner Youth Center, various academic and community development board posts, his church, his family, fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Incorporated. With these capacities, he's taking on volunteer roles, consulting, seminars, and public speaking engagements. His hobbies include travel, cooking, spending time with family and friends, and doing voiceover work for TV and radio. And I want to find out about that too. Welcome, Duane. So happy to have you here.
Oh, happy to be here.
I'm overwhelmed by that bio. I usually am. I'm always excited to talk to people all over the country. And we find these really cool people like you. You came through another friend, Jari Bolander, that we've had on our podcast. And then I read about you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy good. Your career path has taken you so many twists and turns, and yet I'm impressed that your passion for youth has remained true. So will you tell me a little bit about that career journey and your how you waded into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, and it kind of fuses in both areas. I remember being in kindergarten where if I can start off with a small Lunchable, and by the end of lunch period, I would have traded, so many crackers for a piece of candy, so many pieces of candy for a large applesauce. And before you know it, I would end up with, 5 Reese's Pieces cups and, half a sandwich and 3 chocolate milks, which was the gold standard of currency, in kindergarten.
You got the better
chocolate
deal,
milk,
that's for sure.
You can always do it. And so, that was just such an amazing feeling where no matter what I ended up with, I just loved the journey. And I did that from kindergarten pretty much all the way through high school using different things. So by the time I got to middle school, it was, working with graphic design. Then when I got to high school, I'm like, well, if I'm pretty good at graphic design or drawing or trading different artwork, I might as well start a business out of it. And that's what led me to doing different designs for organizations, not just around Illinois, since I'm from Illinois, but also doing it for, bringing my friends along. It's like, hey, you guys want to make a little extra money? Show me some of your designs. I can connect you to the right people. And that's what led to help buy, my first, big computer that was powerful enough to actually run some software. It helped me get my first car. So for me, just over the years, it's connecting usually my friends because I was a kid at the time. But as I got older, it's like, you know what? I love seeing the joy of students learning a skill where it's like, oh, wow, I don't have to ask my parents for money anymore if I do this. I can
That's
go
every
to, I
parent's
can buy
goal,
my,
too, right?
yeah. It's like I can buy my own toys, I can buy my own video games if I learn how to do this.
Yeah. So, that's funny. I have two kids. I might mention that when you and I chatted earlier, and that's always the parents' goal. When my son, and he'll be mad, I told this little story, but when he was in about 3, he said, when I'm 18, I'm going to have cable. Like, that's great if you can afford it. And I'm going to have my own apartment. That's exactly what we want for you, and you're empowered as a person, and you don't realize, oh, wow, maybe that's what mom and dad wanted all along. So what'd your mom, what'd she say when you came home from kindergarten and you told her these little tidbits about lunch?
Oh my gosh, honestly, she got to a point of expecting it. I've always been an extremely driven person, just since birth. And even years ago, when they had the movie Benjamin Button, she's always called me like, okay, you're either born old or you've been here before in life before. I was always curious, but pretty sure of myself, even if I tried something and it failed, and sometimes they failed.
It's interesting because you mentioned the word fail, and I think we talked to, most every entrepreneur will say they started with something, usually it's a lemonade stand or grass mowing. I've not heard the kindergarten trading, so I love that. And then they, I think that's the whole part of it. You fail and you bounce, right? So I'm very curious. Your journeys have taken you, the experiences with youth all over the world. A lot of major U.S. cities. We've already mentioned a couple. What do you think are the commonalities among youth in general from maybe what you saw through the years and where we're going today with youth?
Some of the commonalities I see with youth, and I kind of wrote this thesis back in college where it's called The Young, Gifted, and Business Savvy. And what traits that it was talking about was that you may have students that may be in dire socioeconomic situations that may lead them to, different lives of crime, whether it's selling drugs, whether it's pawning things that aren't theirs. And then on the flip side of that coin, you may have students that may have participated in different gifted programs or access programs where, they may do a workshop and then they get seed capital for a certain amount of money because, the parents have 3 or 4 generations of businesses. What's interesting is that those same students, whether it's a student that comes from, quote unquote, the other side of the tracks and a student that had access to things, their drive they want something of their own is relatively consistent. Their drive to prove to the world that they can, make their own money is pretty consistent. Their sense of curiosity of trying something new is pretty consistent. And what I love about working with youth is that, as I tell them jokingly, you haven't lived long enough for enough people to tell you no, but still keep that spirit all the way through.
I love that. I think you hit on a lot of what we call the tenets of entrepreneurship: the drive, the curiosity, don't take no as an answer. And those are important. Not everybody can be that entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I'm also very impressed when I read your background, Duane, that you created your own degree in college. And of course, now we have that social entrepreneurship degree. But, thinking about it, what made you say where you were was not giving you what you wanted and you need to create it?
Oh, I'm a difficult person. No.
Why say that?
No, not difficult. I love when there's something that I see that can make an impact or an ideal. I'm going to do everything in my power to work with others to help see it to fruition. I did my undergrad at University of Iowa, and actually one of the reasons why I picked Iowa is that they had a strong entrepreneurship program. Where I was able to have a business on campus. We had a business lab. I was in the entrepreneurial learning community during my freshman year, which was great. But at that time, there wasn't an entrepreneurship degree. And so I have a heart for charity. I have a heart for nonprofit. And so for me, it's like, okay, if I create something that's pure entrepreneurship, well, then it's like an entrepreneurship degree. But because I have a passion for, people, planet, and other types of societal things that we can work on, I'm like, okay, but I don't want to just do nonprofit. And so social entrepreneurship was like right in the middle where, how can you do well and do good at the same time? And so I looked at different programs at Stanford, Harvard, Babson College, Yale, a variety of different colleges to kind of look at what were some of the equivalent classes that they had there. And that's what I was used to build for my degree at University of Iowa, build that both online as well as physical classes.
That's
a lot of classes too.
You mentioned several, universities that are well known, and I like to use those universities too when we're doing our research and our content development. But I mean, to draw upon all of the best resources, that's phenomenal. And that shows how creative and innovative you can be if you want to. And again, true spirit of entrepreneurship. You mentioned learning communities, and those are quite popular now. Tell me about your experience and with the learning community. Did that really help you grow?
Yeah, it really helped me grow, primarily because for almost 24/7, you're living on a floor with other students that don't just say, "Oh, I've heard of entrepreneurship," or "I've heard of a particular topic," but instead these are people who have fully embraced it. So it wasn't uncommon to be, 10 o'clock at night, you're eating pizza, but the person across from you on your floor is talking about their startup company. Then you walk further down the hallway, to go check the mail, and that person's already running their startup. And it's like, hey, I do. And sometimes there's not these large, conglomerates. It can be, hey, I love doing photography in high school, and, I'm thinking about learning how to do a photography business. Or, hey, everybody said I made the best cookies. Here I'm learning a little bit more about culinary arts, and how do I, potentially get this idea to scale? For me, as someone who's driven and loves those types of conversations, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I find this in high school? Why didn't I have access to this sooner?
If I'd been in my younger years, I might have said, oh my gosh, I'm behind the 8 ball, but yet you're saying you're walking around and those people, you're drawing on their creativity and it's building your own excitement and passions. We talk a lot with folks about how an interest, which is probably what you have when you join the learning community, becomes a passion. Is that your experience, that the more you're in it, the more you breathed it?
Yeah, it's almost like a exponential growth of energy, where it's like their ideas bouncing off you, you're bouncing off of them. And what's great is that they can challenge you. I think if you're an entrepreneur and you stay isolated, you don't question, and you don't allow people to question, how are you ever going to get better? How are you ever going to become more efficient? How are you going to build networks and partnership, not necessarily competition? And that's one of the things that I loved about bouncing some of my ideas off, not just my peers, but also the professors and even students from other schools, because this was still in a very, very early stages of social media at the time. So Facebook wasn't even called Facebook yet.
Yeah. I'm not going to go. I aged myself beyond you, so I'm not even going to go there at that time. But again, impressive that you're able to do it. Were your professors open to it, or did they give you any kickback on it?
Oh, they loved it. One of the great things I was able to do in my undergrad was, I went through so many different programs that I participated in a week-long immersion program at this place called Lake Okoboji in Iowa, where they brought together the top 32 entrepreneurial students from a few different universities, where we stayed at pretty successful entrepreneurs' homes for a week. But then during the daytime, we came together in different teams and built businesses. They were similar businesses because we did a virtual business model, but it was a great way to kind of bounce ideas off not just people on our campus, but now we're doing this across a much larger network. And I was proud to say my team, we won the competition for both market share and stock price.
Did somebody actually start the business you guys won with?
It was a computer business simulation. So we all had the same business, and we had to make certain decisions using a virtual simulator. But then we also had to pitch to live. And I mean, this was like all virtual, but we also had some physical entrepreneurs in the room that we actually had to get investments from. And they put whatever numbers that the physical investors gave us, they put that in the virtual simulator. So it was a great marriage between the two systems, so that way we get experience in it. But also, I think the investors also had a lot of fun too, of just interacting with students and saying,
Yeah.
hey, I was going to give them more money if they asked for it, but next time on your pitch, this is what you can do differently. So I would love to see something like that repeated across the country because it's such an impact.
It's fascinating. You mentioned we talk about virtual camps and virtual business pitches and all kinds of things are happening. But the element of staying in someone's home who is a successful business person, phenomenal, and that would make it a whole nother intimidating, I think, and yet fun element.
It was amazing, especially we wake up first thing in the morning and before class you're going jet skiing.
Oh,
nice. So that kind of helped out. Most of their homes were right on the lake when they had their own marinas. So it's like, this was almost like MTV Cribs, but this was real. It's like, oh, okay. So I'm staying in the guest house. The guest house is bigger than my house.
That's awesome. And we talk a lot about building a community. That's a wonderful way to show young people, in this case it was college, how do you reach out and form your community and get to know the resources and what an opportunity. So I want to bounce to something totally different. I gave the teaser with your bio, or you gave the teaser with your bio that you wrote a book, and I've read it. My colleague Toya has read it, and it's a lot of fun. You really approach the topic, Jackie and the Dream Stalks, creatively. Tell me what was in your head with that one. And was any of that your own experience? I was kind of curious as I was reading it.
There's different elements of that was my experience. Okay. And what led me to write it was as I kept traveling in different places and working with youth or teaching entrepreneurship, for me, it's like, okay, it's the whole concept of can you still make money while you sleep? And so if I'm doing a public speaking engagement, great. But if I can't make it somewhere, what if a group or a school or a church or an organization buys a series of the books? Great. Hopefully some of that knowledge will be able to be imparted to the student, and that might inspire them to start their own business, or at least look at some of the basic skills of, hey, I need to get an A on my next test. That book it'll teach you the basics of even just setting up simple goals and passing it. So for me, that was
it does, because catalyst. You gave the example of the little girl, her mom praised her she got a good grade. Her mom praised her for it. It was not, you did the work, honey. And I think I remember that as a parent, when we say kind of have the high five to our kids, we're supposed to say, and are you proud of yourself? Which is what because you're supposed to own, right? Own that hard work. And I love that you took the alphabet and you broke it down with all those interactive words on entrepreneurship, or what, kind of formed around it. Tell me, what'd you do with that, or how'd you come up with that one?
Just from having to give so many different definitions to students over and over again, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write a glossary instead of cutting and pasting it. It's like, okay, let me make it applicable, let me make it accessible, and make it relatable to students, no matter what their situation is, and make it timeless. So that's one of the things, as you read through the book, I'd always tell people, what year do you think this took place? And nobody gives the same 2 years.
No, it is timeless. I think like the original story, Jack and the Beanstalk, it is timeless. And you took it was a fun play on it. And I think we're going to let our listeners know a little bit how they can get a hold of the book, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Tell me, so you've moved across the country not too long ago from Chicago to San Francisco to come with San Francisco Achievers. And I would love for our folks to hear more about your mission, your goals, and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, just kind of going along with, passion for working with youth. At the time when I was in Chicago, it's like, okay, it keeps getting cold. I kind of would like a break from a little bit of snow. Found this wonderful opportunity to work with African-American young men, and particularly at San Francisco Achievers, we focus on African-American young men that are in the public high school here in San Francisco. And our goal is to help them lead and thrive, not just get to college, but through college, and hopefully they'll be successful alumni after that. And so we have staff at a number of different high schools helping to work with students on identity formation, career development, financial literacy, health and wellness, culture, information. And what's great is that all of our services are completely free. We take them on field trips. We connect them with different resources, and for the students that receive our scholarship, it's a 4-year college scholarship, by the way, and we connect them to a mentor. So that way, it's not just staff that's kind of giving information to them all 4 years. They're also able to connect with not just their mentor, but also a variety of different professionals to help build their interest and build their career. And so that's been something that has been a personal passion of mine, just because I've had mentors, from high school through college. And so for me, this is a way of returning that and hopefully be able to scale it.
I completely agree. I think mentors are huge, no matter what age you are. I still have
Absolutely.
mentors, and at this point, a lot of my mentors are younger than me. But no, mentors are huge because they have experiences that, you may be able to gain at some point in your career, may not, and the wisdom that they bring. I'm curious, how do you get into the school system? You told me earlier, you guys are currently in 5 of the 18 San Francisco high schools, correct?
Right.
What's your approach? How do you get in with the leadership there?
The approach is that one, I try to start at the head. So I try to start with the superintendent and find out where we needed most and start with there. So using the tenets of entrepreneurship, identify the source, where's the point of pain, and how do we help solve that?
Oh, your customer? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we try to connect with some of the schools that may have very little, if any, program for African-American young men. And the reason why that's a focus is that they make up a very, very small percentage of the overall school system. African-Americans for San Francisco are less than 4% of the city population. And so at many of the schools, students may feel isolated. If they're the only student in their demographic in a class where there's very few. And so as an organization, since we specialize working with this population, we'll actually do a lunch group where it's like, hey, come on in, we'll bring food. And let's be honest, how many teenagers are going to turn down free food, whether it's, a nice burger, a pizza, subs.
Particularly young men. You mentioned your
yeah.
Yeah.
But by having them come together in not just one particular grade, but all 4 grades, it's an opportunity for them to share knowledge across grade spectrum. It allows us to teach them, here's how you effectively study. Let's teach you leadership skills. Let's teach you, how to actually not just use a computer, but do you have access to a computer, and how can we help you get access to a computer too? Mm-hmm. So this is something that we've been doing for about 12 years.
Wow. And, I would think because you're serving all grades in high school, you're, instilling some mentorship right there. I mean, you guys as the staff persons are coming in, but then the 9th graders got the, upperclassmen to look up to, and on and on.
Yep.
That, kind of maybe an underlying goal, I would think. Where do you guys, what's some of the stuff coming up for you in the next couple of years in terms of missions for you guys?
Yeah, we're still going to be focusing on the same demographic, but one of the things that we're looking at, especially in response to the pandemic, is how do we start to build up some of our virtual ways of engagement, whether it's still staying interacting, a couple times a day with our high school students. Could we potentially look at exploring what an app can look like? So that way, if we have students, no matter where they're in our school district, they'll find some value, but eventually over time, perhaps other school districts would find our app of value as well. And that can be a good segue into expanding into other markets. Since we've had a number of different districts say, hey, can you guys come out here and do a couple workshops for us? It's like, you guys are about 200 miles away. We can do a virtual workshop, but as activity and interest continues to build, I'd love to see us scale across the country, just because there can never be a shortage of resources, especially for this target demographic.
And like any good program, it's replicable, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to bounce to something different that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but I want to know about this TV and radio voiceover work you do. How'd you get into that?
I ironically, when I was in high school, I was asked often to do different speeches, to do different introductions. And I'm like, okay, this is great. This is fun. But it wasn't until my sophomore year of college, and that was an interesting time period because that's actually when I did my Disney internship. And so I worked as a intern cast member down in Orlando, Florida. And so many of my friends kept having me do different character voices or have me do different announcements because my day job there was I worked on one of the touring attractions. And so they're like, all right, Duane, we'll give you this tour. Can you do this every 30 minutes? It's like, okay, I can do it. And over time, doing magical moments with kids, I would do Mufasa's voice from Lion King. I would do Stitch's voice. I would do Kermit the Frog's voice. And once I came back to campus, they're like, hey, do you want to record a couple stuff? I'm like, I can. It's like, oh, yeah. Where should we send the check? It's like, wait, what? You want to send the check? Do tell more.
Interest became a passion right there, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, give me a voice. Can I have a voice? Any voice you choose.
I can do Mufasa's voice because it kind of lines up with entrepreneurship. Everything that the light touches is our kingdom.
Very nice. And Lion King is a timeless piece as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No one can ever guess what year everything takes place on Pride Rock because it's a timeless piece. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned at Disney is that a lot of their work, they want to make sure it's timeless. So that way it still has value. It still has meaning generation after generation. That's probably why we can look back fondly at a lot of the work they've been able to produce.
Oh, yeah.
So how do I take that into entrepreneurship and in life?
Right. And tell me, so you have been with several nonprofits. You've started your own businesses, plural. What can you tell others about this journey, this road that you've taken, the pitfalls, the excitement, Yeah,
I would definitely say it's better to plan your work than work your plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And it doesn't
right? I remember that.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm really big in that is that when people would think about, okay, I got to write a plan, I'm not saying it has to be the perfect plan and that it can't be a living document, but at least have somewhat of a roadmap. Trust me, it's going to shift and change because the world shifts and changes, life changes. But if at least you can see a path to what you want to get to, at least it's something that'll help inspire you to get to the end. It gives you access to the resources that can get you to the end, but it also gives you confidence that on those dark days where you're wondering, why in the world am I doing this? Why am I starting something? Why am I putting time, energy, and money into this? You have that plan there that says, hey, you spent some time to put this together because you believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
Keep believing in it because there's a reason why you spent the time, and talk to others about it as well. So it's a roller coaster, but it's one I wouldn't change any other way.
Nice. Tell me one of your greatest joys in starting businesses. Any particular examples?
Yeah, probably one of my greatest joys, and I'll probably jump back to the book one, is having students as young as like 5 years old run up, because since my book has pictures in it, but I'm like, hi, you wrote this? Wow. Maybe I can write one, because I don't like to write. And that's when I shared the little story with the kid who's just learning how to write. It's like, hey, I actually didn't like writing at all growing up, but little bit by little bit, you learn sometimes things that you don't like to do are really hidden gifts. And usually that lets the kid smile. So if they say, well, I don't like broccoli. I'm like, well, your taste buds may change. So sometimes the things you may not like may become a gift. So maybe if you don't like broccoli, maybe you might become a chef. So it's always finding the joy of watching students either receive the book or just ask questions. Because I'm like, hey, I wish I was able to do that when I was their age. And then just actually having access to the book and even just asking questions, not just with me, but even with each other. It's pure magic to me.
You're right. I love that you gave that example, because I'm a huge believer in asking questions. There's so many wonderful things to know that we may never know if we don't ask the question. And I always think questions lead to opportunities.
Absolutely.
And did those mothers pay you to talk about broccoli? I don't know.
No one else says play me or prayed broccoli. Although I do love to make a good broccoli casserole, but I throw some jalapeno pieces in there just to spice it up a little bit. So that's another thing that kind of leads me to inspiration is cooking. So
What's your
half my example.
favorite? What do you like cooking?
Oh, I love to make different types of burgers because I'll actually mix in different things. So whether it's a turkey burger, whether it's a vegetarian burger, I'm all about mixing different spices and making different sauces.
Okay, so I'm coming to your backyard this summer, okay? Tell me, in your work with San Francisco Achievers and the other work you've done with youth, what advice could you give teachers to help them encourage their students to be their best, to be, those questioners, those critical thinkers?
Yeah. It's something very, very simple. It can even just be calling the student by their name. And the reason why I say that is because if a student has parents that or guardians that are busy or they have other siblings, there's been a lot of research we've done when I was back in Chicago. If we didn't actually say the student's name that day or say, how are you doing, Alex, today? How are you doing, Jenny? Their parents may not have ever called them their name during that day, or their teachers may not have ever called their name during the day. It can be like, hey, you, or all right, table number 5. So over time, the students start seeing themselves as a number. But if you can kind of inject that level of humanness by even just simply using their name, it's like, oh, now they're leaning into the conversation. And that's what gets them interested. That's what potentially inspire them. It's like, oh, I like actually hearing my name. What are other venues can I potentially hear my name in? Can I hear it in, starting my own business? Can I hear it in, hey, I got a great grade that I didn't think I would get. Hey, I got it for a sport. So those are things that are very, very powerful because they help a student affirm their identity and affirm their value.
That's really beautiful. I love that. And most of us do like our names and we like to claim them. And so you're right. Hearing our name gives you an automatic personal connection to the person who said it. That's really beautiful. Thank you. So tell me, we're getting toward the end of our little, what we call driving time podcast. We try to get it into commute time, but I really would love you to tell folks, can we get the book? How would we get access to your book, first of all?
Yeah, for anyone that wants to purchase a hard cover, soft cover, I think right now I just have the soft cover and the Kindle versions that are available on Amazon.com. Okay. And so it's just Jackie and the Dreamstalk, and it'll pop right up. It's a green book. I'm sure you'll also be able to have access to the link there. But also for your listeners, I'm happy to share a version of the ebook with everybody, just because I think it's something that has value. We're in the time period where we're seeing humanity rise to the occasion, and in some small way, if this is a way that I can provide that version for free, and it may inspire a young person or adults, because I've had this taught out of corporate America. I'm happy to do that, because I hope that rising tide raises all boats, and in the world today, this is what we need now more than ever.
Thank you. You're right. I appreciate that. And it's a beautiful book. And I as I read it, I thought it's a great read at night with your kids, or lessons from a teacher standpoint. The art's beautiful. I think you did both the art and the writing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really such a fun, approachable book. And I encourage people to look it up. So, Duane, tell us how to get in touch with you if our listeners want to reach back out, hear more, chat with you.
Yeah, probably one of the easiest things. I have a pretty active public profile, especially on my LinkedIn page.
Very good at that, I'll say. Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets back to you, folks.
Yeah, I do use that a lot for a variety of different ventures, and so it's just Duane Wilson, and then you can narrow it down either by San Francisco, Chicago. Perhaps we can provide a link as well. But I'm very active on there and would love to answer questions and, see what other types of engagements or how I can assist.
Great. Thank you. And I went online and with your website at San Francisco Achievers, I'm now on your newsletter, so I'll be able to keep up with what you guys are doing. Want to hear about the fall courses. We didn't get into that conversation, but virtually, not, in person, we don't know what's going to happen.
We're still in the waiting boat, but as true entrepreneurs, we're working out the different scenarios to get it out there.
Yeah, perfect. So I want to be keeping up with that as well. Thank you. Always really a pleasure to talk to someone from another part of the country and doing some phenomenal things. I really appreciate your time, Duane. Thank you.
No, thank you. This is a great opportunity, and any way I can continue to help or connect entrepreneurship, I do think it's a way of life that can help, in a variety of elements of life, and this is a great way of sharing it. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing the other podcasts as well.